Right, so for months Western leaders have played lawyers for genocide. Britain insists its F-35 supply chain is more sacred than the Genocide Convention. Germany mutters about historical responsibility while shielding Israel at every forum. Washington shovels weapons across the Atlantic and calls it defence. The charade was so grotesque it seemed indestructible, until Madrid just blew it all up. Yesterday, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez didn't issue another concerned statement. He dropped a legal hammer on the lot of them, a total arms embargo on Israel. Ports and skies slammed shut, settlement goods outlawed, UNRWA revived, war criminals threatened with entry bans. And just to salt the wound that little bit more, his foreign minister called for nuclear talks with Iran. Spain has detonated the West's wall of excuses to defend the indefensible, and Israel is wailing over it. The only question now is whether others are going to follow, or are they going to continue to choose to be buried under the weight of their own hypocrisies? Right, so for almost 2 years now, the governments of Europe and North America have staged this grotesque theatre. They watch as Israel bombard Gaza into ruins. Their ministers call openly for the erasure of Palestinians, its military dropping bombs on schools and starving children into skeletal silence. Yet the same governments that denounced Russian aggression rushed weapons to Tel Aviv instead. Britain insisted its hands were tied by the sacred F-35 supply chain, and so contracts outweighed the Genocide Convention, though they have, of course, also now denied a genocide is even happening. Washington bragged of ironclad support as though complicity were a badge of honour. Berlin hid behind history, shielding Israel at every international forum, while the International Court of Justice warned of plausible genocide and has been for the last year and a half. But yesterday, Spain shattered the charade. Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez announced a total arms embargo on Israel, not a token freeze or a review of arms licenses, but a legally binding prohibition on all direct and indirect arms dealings. The embargo was only the centrepiece, though, of a 9-measure package against Israel. Spanish ports will be closed to weapons shipments. Spanish skies will be barred to arms flights. Settlement goods will be treated as contraband. Aid to UNRWA will be expanded, atrocity perpetrators banned from entry to the country, Spain's ambassador recalled from Tel Aviv, the EU challenge to follow, and most explosively of all, a demand to reopen nuclear talks with Iran, all as the UK, France and Germany champ at the bit to impose new sanctions on them instead. Spain has not merely acted, it's detonated a precedent here, and NATO and EU state has torn through the wall of excuses of so many others and treated Israel for exactly what it is, a pariah. By doing so, Madrid has ripped Britain's threadbare defences to shreds, embarrassed Berlin's double standards, and undermined Washington's mythology that casts Iran as the villain and Israel as the democratic bulwark of the Middle East. Spain has rewritten the script. Spain's embargo matters because of both its scope and its legal mechanism. Let's deal with the scope first. Madrid is not pausing a few licenses or freezing a single deal like the UK has done. It is outlawing the entire pipeline of military cooperation, including subcontracted parts routed through multinational programs. This tears apart Britain's favourite alibi. For months, Labour ministers have repeated like a mantra that the UK cannot interfere with the F-35 global supply chain. Spain has proved the opposite. With the stroke of a decree, Sanchez has shown that political will matters more than Lockheed Martin's spreadsheets. The legal mechanism is just as explosive. A royal decree, no less, ratified by Parliament, does not vanish with the next news cycle. It embeds this embargo into law. This distinguishes Spain from Belgium's partial regional bans or Norway's piecemeal restrictions. Madrid has written a precedent other EU states cannot ignore. I'm going to find very difficult to. The justification is equally blunt, though. Sanchez declared that Israel is exterminating a defenceless people. And of course they are. He did not hide behind the euphemisms that we're so used to about proportionality or excessive force. He called it what the ICJ has already warned of. Genocide. He used the word. He can use the word. Why can't our politicians? By framing the embargo as compliance with the Genocide Convention, Spain has not merely condemned Israel, it's exposed every Western state that continues arming it as willfully violating international law. Throws them all under the legal bus, so to speak. The embargo was part of a broader package, though, and each measure tightens the noose on Israel, in a manner of speaking. And together they created a comprehensive regime of isolation that recalls the sanctions once used against apartheid South Africa. Spain's ports were the first to close. Vessels carrying weapons bound for Israel will find no welcome in Spanish harbours. Back in the 1980s, dock workers around the world refused to load South African cargo. Today, Madrid has written that boycott into law. So the symbolism is rather clear. The way of empire, once used to conquer, now block the passage of arms to an occupying power. So it should. From the sea to the sky, the ban extended. Aircraft transporting weapons to Israel are barred from crossing Spanish airspace. This is not trivial at all. The US often uses European corridors for weapons transfers. Madrid has turned its skies into a barrier now, declaring that complicity will not be flown overhead. At the core lies the total arms embargo. By banning both direct and indirect dealings, Spain has killed the supply chain excuse. Britain cannot claim helplessness. If Spain can legislate for this, so can London. If London refuses, as it seems determined to continue to do, having decided that the ICJ is wrong and there's no genocide at all, it is because it chooses complicity. Equally dramatic is the settlement goods ban. Brussels currently requires settlement products to be labelled, a bureaucratic shrug at the illegality of it all. Madrid has gone further, outlawing them outright. Goods from the West Bank are not disputed items, they are the fruits of theft after all. Just as apartheid oranges were once boycotted, settlement goods are now treated as contraband. The aid pledge adds weight too. At the very moment when Washington and London cut funds to UNRWA on the basis of Israeli disinformation, favouring their new GHF food hubs, which have become kill zones, Spain has doubled down on backing UNRWA instead. Aid to the Palestinian Authority and UNRWA is not framed as charity but as obligation. By supporting Palestinian institutions, Spain resists Israel's campaign to erase them. Perhaps most stinging for Israel's leadership of all is the promise of entry bans. Reports suggest Netanyahu and Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and others could all soon find themselves declared persona non grata. Imagine the reversal, though. Leaders who once strutted across European capitals now unable to set foot in Madrid, all coming out, of course, at exactly the same time Isaac Herzog, the Israeli president, is due to land in Britain. If that comes to pass, Israel's inner circle will stink of their state's pariah status wherever they go. The recall of Spain's ambassador from Tel Aviv, though not a full break, was another blow nonetheless. Diplomats know this language. A recall is a warning shot. The relationship is broken. Repair it or watch it collapse. Spain has used it sparingly before. To apply it to Israel signals a real crisis in bilateral ties. Madrid did not stop there, though. They went so much further. Alvarez, the foreign minister, demanded that Brussels adopt a bloc-wide embargo. He reminded his peers that the EU is Israel's largest trading partner. There's a lot of leverage here. How can Europe sanction Russia to the hilt while continuing to feed Israel's war machine? The hypocrisy is unsustainable and it's off the charts. By forcing the issue, Spain has put Berlin and Paris and others on the defensive. Then came the real bombshell, though. The call to reopen nuclear talks with Iran. Western diplomats like to paint Iran as the shadow behind every rocket and every resistance movement. By linking Gaza's future to renewed dialogue with Tehran, Spain just demolished that myth. Stability cannot be achieved by indulging Israel and isolating Iran. It requires talking to both. Spain's moves here have functionally set three arenas trembling. Within the EU, Madrid has smashed the fragile consensus. Germany and France cling to their special relationships with Israel. But Spain has pulled the rug out. Ireland and Belgium are likely to join now. Others will face rising pressure from their publics. The double standard with Russia is glaring more and more each day. Sanctions from Moscow, contracts for Tel Aviv. Spain's forced the hypocrisy into the open now. The question is whether the EU can survive such a fracture without realignment. Within NATO, the implications are no less severe. For years, Washington has insisted that support for Israel must be unquestionable. Spain just questioned it. Turkey has long gone its own way, but for pragmatic reasons, Spain's split is different, rooted not in horse trading, but in law and principle. This turns NATO's unity into a fiction. If a major Western member treats Israel as a pariah, how long can Washington maintain the pretense that the alliance speaks with one voice? And for the global South, Spain's actions are vindication. South Africa can point to Madrid as proof that its ICJ case was not an isolated gesture. Brazil and Indonesia can argue that Western hypocrisy has cracked. Spain now looks less like a peripheral European state and more like a bridge between Brussels and BRICS Plus. The symbolic power is immense. At last, a Western state has chosen law over complicity. It's taken long enough as it is. Others will now be asked why they have not followed suit. No comparison is more damning than with Britain, though. On the day Spain announced its embargo, Starmer and Lamy roll out the red carpet for Isaac Herzog. While Madrid recalls its ambassador, London prepares to toast Israel's president. While Sanchez drafted decrees, Lamy recited excuses and wrote them down in a letter which one day, I hope, will end up being Exhibit A. Supply chain defence now lies in ashes. Spain has proved that subcontracting arrangements can be banned. London can do the same tomorrow. It refuses because it will not risk offending Washington or the arms industry. The pretense of helplessness has been obliterated. Diplomatically, the contrast is absurd. In Madrid, Israeli leaders may soon be barred from entry. In London, they're embraced as honoured guests. Which looks more like leadership? Which looks more like complicity? Legally, Britain stands on quicksand now. As a party to the Genocide Convention, it is obliged to prevent genocide. The ICJ has ordered states not to facilitate it by continuing to export F-35 parts, as Britain has excused over and over again, knowing they will be used in Gaza. Britain defied these obligations. Spain has chosen to comply with them. London has chosen crime. The reputational cost will only grow from here. Activists, lawyers, even Labour's own councillors will point to Spain as proof that the UK had other options. Starmer cannot hide forever behind the language of inevitability. Madrid has torn that excuse to pieces. But the boldest stroke was to call to reopen nuclear talks with Iran. For decades, Western policy has depended on a cartoon. Israel, the flawed Democrat. Iran, the irrational menace. Every Palestinian act of resistance has been blamed on Tehran's strings. Every Israeli crime excused as defence against the Persian boogeyman. Spain has burned the cartoon. By arguing that regional stability requires diplomacy with Iran, Alvarez reframed the conflict entirely. Iran is not the shadow behind everything. It's a state actor that has to be engaged with. Gaza's survival cannot be disentangled from the regional balance of power, and that balance cannot be negotiated by pretending that Iran doesn't exist. And this exposes nuclear hypocrisy too. Israel is the only nuclear power in the Middle East, outside the NPT, with an undeclared arsenal. Iran, still a signatory, remains under IAEA oversight, more or less. Yet it is Tehran that is sanctioned and Israel that is armed. Spain demands for talks brings that absurdity into the light too. The pivot also reopens Europe's own abandoned diplomacy. The JCPOA of 2015 was a European achievement undone by Trump. Spain's move hints that Europe could reclaim that space. The very suggestion terrifies Washington, which has invested years in portraying Iran as untouchable. If Europe listens, the myth collapses. It's a big if still, with the UK, France and Germany wanting to enact that JCPOA snapback against Iran with little justification to do so. In the fight against apartheid South Africa, sanctions were decisive. Arms embargoes, bans on settlement goods, the closure of ports, travel restrictions broke the regime's legitimacy. Spain has resurrected that playbook, and not before time. The comparison with Russia is just as cutting. Moscow annexing Crimea, and Europe launches sanctions. Israel annexes land and exterminates civilians, and Europe sends them more weapons. Spain shattered the double standard. If Russian oligarchs can be barred from European capitals, why not Israeli ministers calling for ethnic cleansing? If Russia's aggression warranted embargoes, why not Israel's? Madrid has forced the question into the open, and Brussels cannot dodge it now. Spain's embargo is not only political, it sets a legal precedent. International law forbids complicity in genocide. The Genocide Convention obliges prevention, not just punishment. The ICJ has ordered states not to facilitate destruction in Gaza. Spain has complied, Britain and Germany have not. The EU's own common position on arms exports requires denial where there is a risk of international humanitarian law violations. Spain is applying that standard. Others are shredding it. Campaigners will seize on this. Courts in London and Berlin and Paris will be asked, if Madrid can comply, why can't you? The precedent is live, and it's not going to go away. Spain's embargo and 9 measures mark the most consequential Western rupture with Israel in decades. This is massive news. Ports and skies closed, arms embargoed, settlement goods banned, aid expanded, leaders threatened with exclusion, ambassadors recalled, Europe challenged, Iran reframed. The package is comprehensive. The consequences are vast. Europe's hypocrisy lies exposed. NATO unity looks like fiction. The global south has its vindication. Britain's excuses are in tatters. The Iran bogeyman has fallen. Spain has detonated the wall of impunity. The question now is who follows. Will Ireland and Belgium join? Will Germany and France cling to excuses until public pressure breaks them? Will Britain continue to roll out red carpets while its supply chain defence smoulders in ruins? History is unforgiving. Spain has written a new script, a new chapter. Accountability instead of complicity, law instead of excuses, justice instead of genocide. Others must choose whether to read their lines or to be remembered as accomplices when the verdict of history is delivered, or indeed in the courtroom, should they finally find themselves in one day over this. This Iran proposal by Spain is devastating, particularly for Israel. All their work to isolate and box Iran in, getting undone. But it isn't just Spain doing that, as this video recommendation, as your suggested next watch, will tell you all about. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the same time, which is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.